Highland Marketing is known for building strategic advantage for the most innovative healthcare and technology organisations. Highland Marketing offer a free virtual workshop to AXREM members. You can find details in the members' benefit document attached to your weekly newsletter. Highland Marketing are the headline sponsor of the AXREM BHTA MedTech Conference running on the 13th of May. Get your tickets now by heading to the AXREM website events page or clicking on the link in the show notes.
Welcome to AXREM Insights, developing healthcare through medtech and innovation. Join Melanie Johnson and Sally Edgington as they talk with our industry leaders and experts.
Hello and welcome to AXREM Insights. I'm Melanie Johnson and I'm here with Sally Edgington. Today we have the pleasure to be speaking to both Richard Coldrick, Senior Operations Manager at Elekta, and also AXREM Service and Operations Special Focus Group Convener, and also Declan McGregor, National Service Delivery Manager at Fujifilm Healthcare and AXREM Service and Operations Special Focus Group Vice Convener. So welcome Richard and Declan, and thank you both for being on the show today. Now let's get started by handing over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your story.
Yeah, so I'm Declan McGregor. I'm currently the National Service Manager for Fujifilm Healthcare. My story is field service is pretty much my background. That's all I've ever known. Started off as an apprentice in the utilities industry, then moved into a healthcare role. So moved into the diagnostics, the pathology industry. Worked as a field service engineer across Europe for a few years before moving into the imaging sector. So moved into the industrial imaging sector. Spent a lot of time traveling all over the world on industrial imaging systems before then moving into the healthcare imaging sector. So joined Fujifilm Healthcare as a field service engineer. Fujifilm Healthcare went through some substantial growth. Great thing there was I was along for the ride, and moved through a couple of different roles within Fujifilm Healthcare as a team leader, then a technical manager, and then as we sit here today as the National Service Manager for Fujifilm Healthcare. So leading a team of engineers and application specialists across the UK. That's a little bit about me.
Super, thank you. And Richard?
Hi, Richard Coldrick, Senior Operations Manager at Elekta, looking after North Europe now. Well, mine's quite varied actually. Started off training as a lawyer back in the late 70s. And then I gave up that and moved into the commercial world and set up one of the first Apple dealerships in the UK in 1979, specialising in computer-aided design. There were only three of us. There was one in Nottingham, one in London, and us. And it was really sort of a family business. We were sitting on a fortune actually, but we didn't really have any commercial people in the organisation, ex-teachers and me as an ex-lawyer. So anyway, we ran that for about 13 years. I then switched completely and ran my own property development business for a few years, made quite a success on that, although it was a difficult time in the 90s because the property market was jumping up and down. So in the end, got out of that. Then I moved into the oncology and radiotherapy world in 1995, joined a Swedish company called Helax, who people might recognize the name there, selling treatment planning systems throughout Europe. Remember the first tender I did there was Ninewell Hospitals in Dundee, and I was so determined to get the thing there that I actually caught a train all the way up to Dundee and hand delivered it, and we won. So that was good. So that was Helax, and then in 2004 I moved across to Elekta as the Senior Operations Manager. Been there ever since, 21 years now. And yes, looking after. I've managed. At one stage, I was managing everything apart from sales, so service, finance, operations. I then joined AXREM. I came on board with AXREM not long after I joined Elekta, so this shows how long ago that was, back in 2004, and I can only sort of describe it, Sally, I probably appreciate this, in those days as a gentleman's club, and it's developed tremendously due to Sally over the recent years. It's gone from that situation where we all sat around and have a chat to an organisation with over 70 members, if I've got that right, and we do a wonderful job now influencing government, NHS, and other bodies.
Wow, that's very varied.
And can I just say, we are the furthest thing from an old boys club now, and we've got nearly 80 members, which is quite exciting.
By the time.
Yeah, it's hopefully I can retire early soon.
No. No, you can't do that, Sally. Can't do that.
So to set the scene, I know we sort of talk in jest, but I think service it was service manager special focus group, now newly named service and operations special focus group, and it's actually was one of the most active groups when I joined AXREM, but obviously it's even more active now. So it'd be really interesting to hear from both of you about what your special focus group priorities are.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the kind of key real priorities for me is just ensuring that as an industry and as a sector, I think we've got more of a unified voice. There's a lot of challenges out there in the industry. And I think just myself working for one organisation, there's only limited voice that one organisation can have. But I think when everybody comes together with a combined voice, I think we can really drive some effective change and ultimately drive real efficiencies, I think, in what we do as a sector. Because I think there's a lot that we can continue to work hard on and develop. But with that combined voice, I think that's the best way forward.
Yeah, I agree, Declan, and we need to be like that. In fact, the whole of AXREM needs to be like that, because we work as a team and we work as one voice, because particularly when we're trying to influence government bodies, NHS supply chain, etc. And particularly, we all know, if I can mention the dreaded D word on this podcast, DTAC, we've got to sort that out. And it'll be interesting to see what's happened now with the NHS England being disbanded. It was, I don't know whether, Declan, you were on the call we had the other day where we had their cybersecurity people coming on, talking about the cybersecurity charter. So how will that look going forward if they're going to be disbanded? Is the DHSC going to continue with it? You never know your luck. They might disband it. Who knows? So that's a big area for me. And now we've become operations as well as service. I think more the operations element has been in the meetings for a while, actually, because we've become more involved with regulatory and quality and regulatory, which is sort of area I specialise in, certainly here at Elekta, rather than the sort of service technical side of things. So I think looking at those elements, DTB 0129 as well as another element, which takes so much time. Again, if you look at our manifesto, duplication of effort is a big factor. Duplication of effort, and it's something we keep banging on about to NHS England, NHS supply chain. If we can try and work towards getting rid of that duplication of effort, I think everything's going to work a lot better.
And hopefully the announcement about NHS England, and I think very much it was around duplication of effort and, the complexities that it adds to a system. I hope that it's a positive thing for our industry, but at the moment there's so many unknowns and obviously a lack of detail because it's only just been announced. So I think we need to kind of sit back and see kind of how this all progresses. But you also mentioned, Richard, a really valid point that Michael Bernard from Siemens Healthineers represents AXREM in most standards and regulatory groups that exist within our area, and that is one of the key topics in your meetings. I have to say I'd like to pretend that I understand everything around those standards and regulations, but a lot of it is way goes over my head, but I can see that it's a really useful part of the meeting and one that we wouldn't be able to do without for your group.
Yeah, I think for me, having the experience of the wider group, it's invaluable for me because as I can sit here and struggle with an issue or a problem that I've got, however, getting the feedback from the wider group, the wider industry, that's invaluable to be able to reach out to, either people with more experience or people with just a different opinion. I think the AXREM, I think, is incredible for that. I think a lot of other industries and sectors would really benefit from such a collaborative network and opportunity, because rather than just an individual kind of manufacturer being siloed where they deal with their industry problem by themselves, I think it's great to see for AXREM where we can come together and really understand what our challenges are as a group and come up with a common solution moving forward.
Absolutely. And that leads in quite nicely to my next question, actually. So we know members of the group have had some pinch points and challenges, and rightly so, Richard, you've already mentioned the dreaded D word, DTAC, which is Digital Technology Assessment Criteria. But why do you think consistency across the NHS is so important for the areas that you guys manage?
Well, again, as I mentioned before, consistency is the word, isn't it? I mean, the easier it will be for us as a group to work effectively, not to waste time. As I've mentioned before, the duplication, resources involved. I mean, this is important for the customers. Let's face it. If we're putting extra resources in to come up to meet all these requirements that have been thrown at us, because it adds extra cost. And sometimes it even means going to third party to get them involved. I think consistency, not one part of the NHS doing one thing and another part of the NHS doing another thing without them actually talking to each other. That would help. That would help a lot. So that's the way I see it going. Certainly.
Yeah, but I think for me, to echo Richard, I think consistency is, we see the day-to-day challenges of the NHS in general. A lot of the challenges, with a bit of consistency and a bit of smart thinking applied. A key example for us is remote access, remote support. It's a huge challenge across industry, and we understand that the NHS and the healthcare industry in general it's very risk averse from a cybersecurity perspective. However, there's no one set criteria and one set standard for how to achieve remote access across the NHS. So you can go to two customers 10 miles apart with completely different ideas, different criteria, different standards. That makes it really hard for industry to actually have a set standard and a set thing to comply with. So I think for the consistency across the board would be perfect if there was a set standard. We can then, as an individual manufacturer and then as an industry, understand how we can fit in around them standards, and then we can almost have an out-the-box solution for remote access, rather than what you've got is possibly 20 different documents to complete for one customer or 24 for another customer. It's so varied, rather than just a standard and consistent approach. Same with DTAC as well. If there was a common requirement, it reduces the burden on members. It means we can ultimately have defined answers and responses and really speed up the procurement process and make it a little bit more efficient than where we are as we sit here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And all those costs and time that's being put into the system by complexity. And we talk about one NHS, but it's not one NHS. It's hundreds of different trusts all doing things slightly differently. And until you see it from an industry perspective, where you're dealing with all the different trusts and having to do things slightly differently for each trust, you don't really see. And I kind of just, as you were both speaking, I wrote 4 things down: efficiency, cost savings, patient experience, and workforce, because obviously there's issues in terms of retaining the workforce within the NHS. But actually, if the systems were more simplified and more consistent, that would be better for the workforce as well. And obviously that frees some of their time up to be doing the jobs that they want to be doing, spending time with their patients.
Yeah, certainly.
Can I go back to the buzzword you just mentioned, consistency? Here's a typical. I mean, it'd be ideal if you had this centralised requirement from the NHS, one form you can refer each trust and hospital to, rather than, as we say, they're all doing their own thing. Prime example, we had a software application which was approved DTAC-wise by the NHS central body, NHS England actually, and it took me about 18 months to complete. Got it in place, and then along comes a trust, and they want DTAC requirement performed for the same piece of software. And I said, well, don't worry about it, because we've got it centralized with NHS England as a centralized DTAC paper. And what happened? NHS England wouldn't allow them to refer to it. They came back and their answer was, no, sorry, every trust has got to do their own thing because of, their own due diligence, basically. So that's where they're coming from at the moment, which is, whoa, way off.
Yeah,
way off.
And I would definitely say to our listeners that if you want our most up-to-date statement, we do have a statement around DCB 0129 and DTAC on our website, so please do refer to that on kind of industry's current position on that.
Let's just dream that we do have one NHS eventually, and consistency and standards across the board. That would be amazing. So that's what we can hope for. So obviously you briefly mentioned the manifesto, Richard, earlier. And obviously, just to say, obviously, to all the listeners, the manifesto has now been approved within AXREM, and we're just in the final stages of planning for the manifesto launch. So obviously just watch this space, and obviously that will be released in due course. But now looking ahead and horizon scanning, what's next for the special focus group? So Richard, do you want to go first?
Okay. Yes, more guest speakers. That would be good. I think it's always good to get as long as a guest speaker that's on topic, that we can all relate to. That's an important element. And obviously we've got the head of policy and compliance at British Healthcare Trust joining our meeting, which is good to see. And this goes back to how important the regulatory compliance element is now within the meeting. So to have a guest from the British Healthcare Trust Association is really good going forward. The meeting I chaired earlier this year was really good. Fantastic integration, comments from everybody. One thing I would like to just point out as an observation, we send out detail for people to review, and I know people are snowed under with stacks of emails, and that's a lot better, by the way. Now we're getting the single mail out, the newsletter, which is a big improvement. That's really good.
Good.
But let me put an example out. The right to repair. Now, it was important. We got involved with IPEM on the right to repair, Institute of Physics, Declan and myself, Peter Chase from Elekta, Michael Bernard, putting his case forward in lively detail, and so that was good interaction. But what I wanted to see was feedback from everybody, because it's no good putting our position forward to the IPM for right repair when it's only come from basically Declan, myself, and Michael Bernard. So if I can try and encourage members to. We love your feedback. We get it in the meeting, fantastic. But if you could just get a little more feedback in that type of situation where we want a paper reviewed, and hopefully you'll understand it if it's come from Michael. But that would be good for me going forward. I think that's about it from me.
Yeah, so I think for me, looking ahead for the group, I think it's continuing to work closely with our industry peers. We mentioned in the manifesto kind of one NHS, and I think for that to really be a success, I think as industry, we should also have one common voice. I think that's really, really important that we have, that common voice and common viewpoint. The other part as well, I think look forward to really welcoming new members, and as Richard mentioned, speakers and industry insights. I think that's really important. Just that it's not a group of industry sat around talking around, what's relevant to them, but also bring in industry insights to really give us that closer insight as to some of the things that are happening within the industry, so that's whether from within the NHS or from further afield. Basically, just to make sure that we'll continue to really exceed the needs of our customers at the sector. But yeah, I think that it's continuing to just drive that really one voice across the across the industry as we move forward.
Absolutely. And I think one thing, I mean, Richard, I know you know especially about me, is I don't like to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. I'm not just going to have a meeting to organise the next one. And what we've become really good at is making agendas really relevant. And we are a member-led organisation. It's your organisation. We're here to facilitate what members want. And we do have really interesting agendas, like you say, brilliant speakers. And we'll continue to take the feedback from the members to ensure your meetings are as interesting as they can be. So in terms of the special focus group and maybe AXREM more widely, what do you think the benefits of being involved with AXREM are?
Most importantly, and I think we've mentioned it a number of times this morning already, the big benefit I see is working together as a group. We work as a team, to quote a value, and in influencing government and the NHS and regulatory bodies. The more members we have on board, the greater influence we have, and that's a lot of that's down to you, Sally, getting lots of people on board with this. So that's important for me, most important thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it's that again, working alongside industry peers and learning from each other's experiences. I think the key part for me when first joining AXREM was the realization that the challenges that I'm facing day to day, it's not just a me challenge, it's a challenge that's faced across the industry. So we're not alone in the challenges that we're seeing. And again, I mentioned earlier, but I think the networking side, the healthcare sector is a huge industry, but it's also quite a small industry in its own right as well, in terms of it's very, very close knit. For me, it's great to see the same kind of faces, no matter if colleagues move on to other OEMs. It's always great to kind of see some friendly faces. And I think a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of other industries and sectors, I think would really, really benefit from the network and opportunity, rather than just companies being siloed and being kind of a company. It's quite rare for almost a competitor to talk to another competitor. But I think AXREM brings everybody together in a kind of a neutral ground, a common ground, and really allows us to understand each other's challenges.
And we're able to create that safe space for you to have those conversations. Obviously, we're governed by very strict competition law guidance. Yeah. But what's really good, especially in the service and operations group, is many of the things we're talking about, there's no competitive kind of edge or advantage. Actually, making sure that we create, a sensible thinking industry, and that you're all privy to the same information, for, if you like, competitive reasons is really important. And I think that's what we're able to do. And I think sometimes when I'm speaking to prospective members, that I don't think they quite get it until you're actually part of it and you can see the benefits to your job role, your team, your business. It can sometimes be quite hard to quantify, but it's really good to get that positive feedback from you guys.
Another example of where we worked, and to be fair, this is going back quite a while actually, when we were moving away from being a gentleman's club and we were actually doing things. But to be fair, one of the big examples where we all worked together was creating the AXREM handover form, which is now industry accepted, all the NHS hospitals accepted. And that's a wonderful example of how the AXREM team worked together and that all the industry and the hospitals has accepted it. So that's a good example for what we can do.
And a great example of consistency, which I'm sure we could use, with some of the processes and procedures within the NHS now to show that it can work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, super. So I'm going to go on to my quirky question. So if you could switch lives with anyone else for a day, who would it be and why? Richard, do you want to go first?
Okay, well, I think I mentioned this briefly at the exec meeting we had, and it then ensued a lively conversation, as you can imagine what I'm going to say, in that I would like to be Donald Trump for the day. And you can imagine what conversation.
And the hair and
all. Well, I'm coming on to that. So you can imagine what conversation. Yeah, so I can do what I like. I can tell people what to do. And I can solve all the wars in the world and get the Nobel Peace Prize. So for me, and actually, I have got a similar haircut. So that would be my choice for the day.
You will need a few pots of tan, though, Richard. You know.
Oh God, yeah, I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant! I like that one. And how about you, Declan?
So this was quite a tricky one to answer. I think for me, there's an author who I've read quite a lot. His book's called Rory Sutherland. He's a marketing and advertising executive, which sounds terribly boring. But I think the key part of Rory Sutherland, and he's got a unique kind of mindset and a unique way of being able to see challenges as opportunities. In my day-to-day work, I'm kind of super data-driven, kind of fine print, and I've got a really rational thought process. Whereas when you kind of read Rory Sutherland's books, when you listen to him speak, he's got that unique way of being able to really sometimes think a little bit irrationally to get a really rational answer out the back. You know, he says that the problem with logic is that it kills off the magic. I think for me, it would be lovely just to see my challenges that I face day to day through the eyes of kind of somebody with so much imagination. Yeah, and because one thing I do enjoy is understanding the relationships between kind of human behaviour and what we see day to day and then the data that we see. But I think it would just be great to be able to see that more imaginative kind of process day to day. I think that would be a real eye-opener for me day to day.
Oh gosh, I hope you can't look at my human being and data. It might be a scary place to be.
Yeah, I think it's just the imagination that I like.
Thank you, Declan, for that very sensible answer rather than the stupid one that I came up with.
Yeah.
I did have Donald Trump written down this morning, but
well, okay.
Yeah, I thought I'd maybe.
Well, thank God I don't think like him. That's all I can say.
There's a bit of a contrast there.
Bit of a contrast, just a bit.
Fabulous. So I think we found out a lot more about Richard and Declan today, and hopefully been really insightful about the work of AXREM's Service and Operations Special Focus Group. So a big thank you to Richard and Declan for joining us, and thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Join Sally and I again next week when we will be speaking to Kaylee Patterson about the AXREM Digital Pathology Special Focus Group. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe or feel free to share the podcast with friends.
Before you go, have you booked your ticket to the medtech conference held by AXREM and the BHTA taking place on the 13th of May? If you haven't, you are missing out. Make sure you head over to the link in our show notes to book your tickets or head to the events page on our website. We are meeting at the Mercure Hotel in Northampton, 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. We have key speakers from NHS, MHRA, NICE, the government, and more. All the details are on our website. The link for tickets is in the show notes. We hope to see you there.